think for most startups, anybody listening to this is more about solving a problem or finding a business opportunity with one of them is your best bet. There's everybody's got this expectation mentality of, if I become famous on the internet, people are just going to come to me. And I'm sorry, that doesn't even work really. Maybe it could have been successful. As I said, I didn't know what I was good at. I was not really earning proper money and like doing research and giving value, but I didn't know what I was good at. Well, it's got better. So I was more talking about day one when I was here. Why is that?
Welcome to the Sandpit Startups podcast, where we journey into the minds of the brightest and the best the region has to offer. We're here to connect the entrepreneurs at the studio with the entrepreneurs sitting at home. We're here to motivate, educate, or inspire you, and if it does, you know what the follow button is.
In today's episode, we are joined by Obediah Ayton, the director of Dhabi Holding Company. He's also the chairman of Abu Dhabi Family Office Summit, and he's also one of the top 50 most influential and connected people in the UAE. And today we'll be talking very much interesting things, especially about the family office, a new investor class that not many startups know about. We'll also be talking about Abu Dhabi and Dubai as different startup hubs. And finally, how do we catch the eye of such family offices or the new investor class? Thank you so much, Obadiah, for joining us today on our podcast.
Thanks for having me. No, looking forward to it.
So, you're a young guy, and it sounds like from what Abhishek just said, you've got all these accolades and sort of experiences under your belt. What's been your story up to now?
So, British, everybody calls me Obadiah, which was weird for me because my mother would call me Obadiah.
Okay.
But as you know, the British, we invaded God knows how many countries thousands of years ago, and they obviously took this name from somewhere in this part of the world. So coming here, I mean, it was when I first went into Dubai, I met an Emirati and he was just like, Mr. Obadiah. And I was just like, oh, wow, what does this mean? Yeah. But no, I guess I'm just one of those normal Dubai stories, really. Came to Dubai, saw the bright lights, went to a few conferences, business, just did a bit of networking, and then went back, thought about it, looked like there was a bit of an opportunity there. I don't really have an impressive CV in London. I didn't really have a CV at all. I studied accounting at university and then kind of just tried to start my own businesses, but didn't know what I was doing. So I wanted a fresh start. So went out to Dubai, stayed in a long stay hotel, like most people do. You don't jump straight into a big rental kind of, well, most of the time we don't have our Emirates ID yet or a bank account. So long stay hotel, built an accounting and a marketing company pretty much from my laptop and just grew from there. And my goal, short-term goal, was just to make a couple $1,000s of revenue. And that was it. Like, that was my short-term goal. How do I build a couple of brands, sell them, get some business in, have nobody to deliver the business, but once I get the business in, I'll find
You'll figure it out.
And I guess that was the first chance I saw of Dubai, where we spoke about this earlier, 100 different nationalities you have around.
Exactly.
You. So like access to those talented people was so fast.
Yeah.
And it was like, everybody was like, yeah, like we're open to business. When if you went into like London or other parts of Europe, they kind of look at you and go, you know, is this worth my time? When here they're hungry. So it was a good start here, and then it just kind of continued from there.
That's the thing about the modern day. Loads of people complain about how the boomers and generations of the past have access to like such affordable housing and things like that. And it's like, yeah, we can complain about that, or we can look at it this way. You know, we've got access to incredibly diverse cultural hotspots such as Dubai. Not just that, but online, everything's accessible. It's like, you know, look at what we do have. And Dubai, I feel like has that on lock, like doing so well in that regard.
It's glamorous, right? Dubai is very glamorous. And it sells the entrepreneur story very well. But it's small.
Yeah.
It's like a village, really.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure after meeting you guys today, I'm going to bump into you at one of the events or walking around DIFC or somewhere like that. And I guess you don't get that same type of connectivity in other cities. So that's a benefit, but it's also very competitive.
Yes.
So it's like we're all barking up the same tree to say, oh, we provide this service, we save you time, we save you money. And it's the same in the startup world as it is in the fund manager world. Is in the startup world, who do you pick if you've both got the same software?
Right.
And you both look as good
choice.
as each other.
Yeah.
You both got a couple of good clients. And then in the fund manager world, you could both be the biggest hedge funds or the credit funds, have a great book of LPs, but you both produce the same returns. How do I pick who to go into?
Yep.
So this is what we're running into at the moment in this country. Is it's kind of good competition, and with good competition comes the really good entrepreneurs because they figure out how to beat that kind of base level.
Right. No, that's for sure. Especially when you have competition, it raises the level of the quality and the standards. And I'm sure that, as you mentioned, the competition is high for sure in this part because it's quite narrow in terms of the options also that you have here. So it's difficult per se. But there's one thing which about you which is amazing is your connections with the family offices. And as a startup entrepreneur, until recently, I wasn't aware of this new investor class. So we, as a startup founder, would only look at angel investors, VCs, private equity, or maybe sometimes accelerator or syndicates. But the family office is something that I have recently experienced myself, and would love to get more details from you on how they invest in startups.
So the interest I had in family groups here was more about the history. I mean, coming into the local market, I wanted to learn about the Emirati tribes, if you want to call them.
Nice.
And I just started looking, and then you find these groups, these holding companies, these enterprises. And in London and when I was in New York, I used to work for family offices as an accountant.
Okay.
I wasn't really front end, I was more back end. So I kind of knew what one looked like. Now over here, the family office word didn't really exist. It wasn't really anything. Like everyone would call themselves a family office, but they're just a holding company. They're just a group of companies that are very successful. So let's say you're an Emirati family. You started a consumer business vertical. You went into automotive. You went into real estate, right? Now those businesses are operational. You have hundreds of staff. When all the money comes back, it goes to the holding level. But typically with operational holding companies, the money needs to be used to expand those businesses. So there's never really a dedicated pool of money to invest in startups.
Okay.
There's no dedicated pool. So if you came to me and you had the best idea and I'm just like, I go to my dad and say, I love this guy. Dad's even like, yeah, but where do we get the money from? Okay, we're wealthy and we're rich, but we don't have like $500,000 to just throw into this company. It's in those companies.
It's difficult to
so
find that
it's weird
reserve.
for us looking at a successful massive group worth millions and we're like a little startup going, we only need 250k and you're like multi-millionaires. They don't have the access to it. So
is it a liquidity issue or?
No, it's a structure issue.
Okay.
Right. So again, over here, building this country over the last 52 years, they were building companies. When in Europe and Asia, US, what happens is when an ultra high net worth has an exit or has a group of companies and becomes so successful, they would get a pool of money. You would either give it to a banker to invest, give it to Rothschild, you give it to Deutsche Bank, whoever,
right?
Or you hire those guys in-house and you
Okay.
set up this thing called a family office, which is a bank account full of money. And it's up to you clever guys, I've employed you and I'm giving you a big salary to go and build a portfolio.
Okay.
So that is what a family office is. And typically they're in DIFC, ADGM, foundation, trust structures, where it is a pot of money and your job is to make money with nothing to do with our real estate, automotive and whatever business.
Yeah.
Your job is to go and make us money that we didn't even think of.
Okay.
That's what a family office is. Now, with VC, they're more approachable, real family offices. Why? Because their job's to make money for their boss.
Right.
Their job's not to look after companies that have issues every day in supply chain and other stuff, human resources. Their job's just to make money. So if I've got a startup that is, it's growing, it's just done a fairly decent seed round, good names on the cap table, and I think that it's going to be acquired in 3 or 4 years' time, let's go. Right?
Okay.
I can see that. But if I then go to a family holding company, let's say I make very good friends with the third generation son, we have a great alignment in artificial intelligence or distributed ledger.
Yeah.
Either he has money that he can access from dad, but actually knocking on the door of the hold company, they could sit there and entertain you and go, great company, can we use you?
Okay.
So you can get them as a client, and maybe down the line they're going to fuel you with money for expansion. But actually getting money as equity, that's the challenge. So that was the struggle I found here when I first came here.
How do you solve that challenge? If they come in and say, mate, we need you on our team in this office, like, figure it out, because we want cash. We want cash in the bank to be able to use for these things.
Yes, agreed.
How do we get it?
I think because if you look at the UAE and Saudi Arabia, right? The UAE is a little bit ahead. Why? Because they've done the franchises. So where we had Chuck E. Cheese, Tony Romo's, all these horrible US food brands that make you fat, right?
Yeah.
They're disappearing. They used to be on Sheikh Zayed. We used to have Applebee's, all these other stuff.
Yes.
They've gone now. You go to Saudi Arabia, they're still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Chuck E. Cheese is like booming, right? It's already gone bust in America many years ago. So look at the franchise model. So as a family group, we're really used to franchises.
Okay.
So you have a software that works in England and your clients of HSBC and a bunch of other big names, I'll have you tomorrow. Let's use you. I'll sell you to all my friends, all my clients and the government.
Right.
You ask them for money day one, that's a challenge. Okay. So it's kind of like you have to go with this business hat to let's make money together. Then you can figure out, once you're on the inside, you'll be able to figure out how to pull some money your way. But their mentality is more about funding a franchise than actually giving you the money.
All right.
Let's fund it together rather than sending money to your bank account and you going to spend loads of money on ad spend and burning cash.
So you mentioned these family offices have, for example, like a chief investment officer.
Correct.
And they have a portfolio. So in their asset classes, they don't have a specific area for, let's say, startups, because if they have to give returns they will diversify their risks. And if you put in money in a startup, they could get up to, let's say, 100, 200, 300% return on investment. So that currently is still a work in progress in this part of the world, or because it does exist in parts of Europe.
Of course.
And it actually helps not just the start of the economy also. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's got better. So I was more talking about day one when I was here. So over the years, it's getting better and better. Why is that? Well, I think regulation and tax is a huge driver. So you need to structure yourself differently now. I think the dads of this country, a lot of them are 70, 80 now. Second generation want to get exposure to tech stocks in America. They want to invest in the next best Indian software that's going to list in New York NASDAQ. So I think as the years have gone by, we're seeing the proper structures.
Okay.
For example, the Canoe family, Bahrain, big in logistics.
Yes.
They've actually been very present in Dubai. I think the chairman lives in Dubai. They took a lady called Rebecca, who used to, or still runs, I think, Mindshift Capital, which is like an all-female-led VC, to run the venture arm for the family.
Ah, okay.
So they took a decision to say, we need to invest in startups ourselves across the Middle East. So they bought the expert in. So they now have a mandate to invest in startups as a family group.
Okay.
So if you do enough research, you can start to figure out who is in the position so you don't waste time. But as I said, I think for most startups, anybody listening to this is more about solving a problem or finding a business opportunity with one of them is your best bet, unless you have a a Rebecca who went specifically to build out a portfolio of startups.
Do you think that's going to become a trend with family offices
Yeah.
investing in startups? Because
Has to.
you see the region like making it so much easier and accessible for startups to grow here and scale here too. It must be aligned with what then family offices want to do too.
I think the honest truth is, behind all the lines, it's risk on your job. Over the previous years, it was like, if I work for a big family conglomerate here, I can invest in, I don't know, Standard Chartered's fixed income bond that's going to pay me a safe 10% per year. I'm going to do that all day. If I've got a startup that doesn't make money, that needs to burn cash for 2 years, that's got a couple of investors on the cap table, I'm going towards Standard Chartered's bond. I'm not using this. It's not worth losing my job.
Yeah.
Now, I think because the government and like Saudi Arabia are going nuts about VC, there's less risk. Why? Because there's more of these like semi-government VCs putting fuel behind these startups, which then will lower my risk as a family group to get involved.
Yeah.
It will lower my risk as an angel investor. Like, why is angel investing not really boomed here yet? But we're surrounded by people who drive fancy cars and got massive houses. It's because nobody's taking that early stage risk. So with more incubators, more accelerators, there's a bit of a baseline where somebody's kind of got that product to a certain stage where my money's a little bit safer.
Yeah. Because a lot of startups, like, I think you were telling me it's easier once you get the first investor, because then it's like proof of concept, sort of like
validation,
social validation, exactly. And then also the risk factor now as well. It's like, well,
pricing.
Okay.
It's like, we only know that our second-hand car is worth what it is because of a comparator marketplace.
Yeah, it's all uncomparable.
We actually don't know the price of our car.
Right.
We need to look at other people.
Yeah.
So as a startup, unless this is where it struggles with a lot of startups. If you're so niche, it's so hard to find a comparator. But if you're very generalized, you can actually work out how much your company's worth based on other rounds and where companies are in their size.
Yeah.
Right.
But people don't really want to copy what other people's doing. Most people are like, look at Kareem right here. It wasn't a copy, but you could base Kareem on a valuation based on how Uber succeeded.
Right. Yep.
So that's why maybe it was so successful in terms of its pricing round.
But also, like, the price of something is only as much as someone's willing to pay.
Agreed.
Yes.
So if you get the
who
first
prices
investor, it's like, right, well, at least someone in the world thinks it's worth that much.
Agreed.
Or two people, I guess, if the investor and the founder. So then the next but the next investors become easier to get on board because it's like a bit more empirical. This is how much it's worth.
And this is where I think as a founder, the mindset of the investor, too many founders don't understand that person sitting across the other side of the table, his mindset, right? A VC is paid to spend money.
They're answerable to people.
It sounds like a nice job. Paid to spend money.
Now, I admire VCs because they have to take that risk on pricing the business and they need to use their expertise. And don't get me wrong, I would hate spending other people's money. It sounds like a nice job, but what if you screw up?
Yeah.
So that's why they have a huge portfolio to kind of spread the risk. And you know the VC model, you have very few that are successful in that portfolio. So this is where the family groups and family offices rely on the VCs. So the more VCs that we're getting here now who are pricing these startups, I'm sliding a term sheet across the table to say, we've been priced. You don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
So for me as an investment manager, it's like, whew, thank God.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't put my job at risk. I'll sign here, I'll follow on, yeah, no problem.
Interesting.
Why? Because Global Ventures are in, Middle East Venture Partners are in, Sharuk Partners are in.
Right.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Right? They've got Mubadala's money. They can't be stupid. We're back it, we'll follow them.
So then how do you determine the pricing when, like you say,
There's multiple factors. I mean, you need to go into comparators. You need to, if you make revenues, there's revenue multiples.
Yeah.
If you'd never been priced before, obviously that's quite tough. But a lot of people last year raised safe notes. So they would say you get a 20% discount in 18 months' time.
Yeah. Or convertible notes, whichever
Which
works.
makes me a little bit worried that there's going to be a bunch of safe notes ready to convert at the end of this year.
Yeah, it'll be triggered.
They have to convert.
Yeah.
So
What happens in that case?
It gets turned into equity.
yeah,
It's simple
Founders lose
agreement
out.
for future equity. That's
at
why
the
it's called
time it
SAFE.
was good
Yeah.
because you don't have to price your company,
Okay.
which is an easier job for an investor.
Mm.
But VC is only just starting to come back. It's been horrible for last year. And
So
the reason
they're
why it's
coming
coming
back to
back,
equity, is it?
the reason why it's coming back is because we know we're going through a financial cycle. And if you look at all the history around VC, typically when you have that financial crisis, all the tech that's built after that financial crisis goes on this 7-year ride
Okay.
where you see the best software companies. That's where we saw like the WeWork, the Ubers. We saw it through that last tech cycle. So everyone's feeling as if you're an emerging manager now, VC, if I invest in your fund, there's a high chance that one of those startups is going to be pretty successful. Why? Because we're going through this financial cycle. Interest rates should come down this year. Geopolitics, touch wood, should level out. It means that startups, in a way, have got less competition.
Mm.
At the end of this year, there's going to be a lot of sad stories. People are going to have to let go of their companies, which makes the market smaller for new competitors to come in.
Right.
And also the people who survive, it becomes more beneficial for them to still be alive because the market gets smaller. So
Right.
in a financial crisis, startups rely on customers or startup investment if they're burning cash. But when that stops, they have to shut shop, which makes, again, we've said this place is a small place. So I think Dubai and the UAE will become less competitive at the end of the year for startups, which will kind of press this ignite button. So let's say 2025, there's going to be a good amount of energy here.
Do you think they've strategically coincided corporate tax with that financial cycle?
So corporate tax, I find so interesting because never has a startup in this country said, oh, I'm looking to raise money from a New York VC. Never. Why? Because it's never really been done unless you're big, right? Like Series C or D round or pre-IPO. And why is that? Because nobody used to trust this country's regulatory system.
Okay.
Because not a single person has disclosed their books to the regulator. So think of a startup in 2025 who've disclosed all of their accounts to the regulator. They've paid a bit of corporation tax. That is exactly the same as what developed markets have done. So you're going to see a wave of foreign direct investment into startups here from foreign VCs for the first time ever. Why? Just purely because of compliance. So I feel sorry for, again, startups here because it sometimes may not be them. It's just our environment. And we have a great environment here. But on the regulation side, we're still not there yet.
Yeah.
Right.
So corporation tax will be a huge trigger
Okay.
for people who will trust putting money into a registered entity here. Because then they'll say, oh, well, he's compliant and the regulator's involved.
Okay.
So if I eventually want to get my money out or if there's a dispute or anything, I know that it's all controlled. Which again comes back to the trust element of me putting my money behind somebody.
Right. So I used to think that in order to get international investors' confidence to open up let's say a holding company in a DIFC or an ADGM, because they are regulated as well. For example, DIFC is regulated by the DFSA. So that wasn't perhaps enough. That's why they have brought in with the corporate tax. Whereas the neighboring country in Saudi, they are waiving that off. There is no tax involved, and many startups are thinking of probably shifting base there. What are your thoughts on the neighboring country and the current scenario?
Yeah, it's. I learned this from my last summit actually. I managed to somehow convince an Indian billionaire to speak, and he said he moved to Switzerland because he had to pay tax because he wanted money from Glencore, which is a massive institution in Switzerland for mining. So I think DIFC have come a long way and they are heavily regulated. AGM has a great brand as well, but it's still classed as a tax haven.
Right.
And when you're classed as a tax haven, you still have some of the wrong audience.
Yes.
So once we get rid of being classed as a tax haven, then just the image of this place becomes different. And Saudi, being a tax haven is a marketing effort. It's to attract. Why did I move here? Yeah, a big portion of that was because I don't pay tax anymore. So do I potentially want to explore Saudi Arabia because they're not paying tax? Yeah, maybe. Why not?
Yeah.
I think most humans will run around the world trying not to pay tax their whole life.
Yeah.
That's normal.
Human nature, yeah.
Human nature, yeah. So, but I think from a foreign direct investment standpoint, I know most Saudi startups have holding companies in ADGM
Oh, really? Okay.
because of that basis. If you want the future of your startup to not just be GCC, you need to be compliant. You need to be paying tax. You need to be this, because if you want foreign money in or a New York VC to help you expand into the US, you can't be registered in Saudi Arabia yet. But you know the potential of Saudi Arabia. It's just a time limit.
Do you think that's why sort of like VCs and family businesses and even the government are willing to invest in companies that come over from the UK, the US, and India and other sort of registered places, because these businesses are already compliant?
Completely.
Like they're ready to,
and they work
in a compliant
developed market.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, back to the risk, back to the franchise model.
Yeah.
It works there, so it's going to work here.
Yeah.
And we just replicate it, less risk. So that's why it sucks sometimes for a startup here, is you can work very hard being a local homegrown entity, and a big shiny Indian company comes in and steals your VC investment.
True that.
So I have huge hopes. I have my own startups that I've kind of built within my group. I told you this morning that I'm shutting one down, but then another one's doing really well out of nowhere, and I've been funding it for a year.
Okay.
Zero money it's made. Had to pay for the license. Had to do this. I've hired some guy who's a specialist. Had to pay his salary. And we've won a little bit of money, but it's just been sitting there because, to be honest, we had to build our own processes. We had to build our own sign-up forms. We had to build our own basic CRM system. And I was word of mouthing everything. And then I just said, it's ready. And I'm just starting to see it now, word of mouth spreading.
Yeah.
So it's great. So it's just like, as one falls, you get another one. So you have the choice of, as I said, you either hustle and stay around and survive.
Yeah.
Or you drop it and move on to the next thing. And I think the next thing, and the best thing about the UAE, is we're a developed emerging market, meaning there's so much potential for boring services here. Like you don't have to have the next shiny thing on Sheikh Zayed Road, like Yango, everywhere at the moment. You don't have to compete with them. Just provide a boring service and do it well, and you make a great company.
That's so funny. We just released an episode like maybe a few weeks ago titled "Boring Businesses."
Yes.
And it's exactly that. It's like a very simple, straightforward service, but done very well, very organized.
Yeah, very successful as well. Washman and
Washman.
That's the one. Yeah.
I like them,
Yeah.
but I use Just Clean. The Washman are better in a way. Well, no, neither of them are different really.
They're both
just
boring.
They're different
Both
business,
boring, yeah.
but they're different business models,
Yeah,
right? Just Clean is a marketplace,
Yes.
and Washman have everything themselves, last mile and
The whole supply chain.
the whole supply chain.
Yes.
So they're completely different. So, like Just Clean, I like because you have choice. You have you can go anywhere now in the GCC and still use the same app, and it's very digitized. But I guess if you start building a trusted relationship with Washman, it becomes a very nice asset. But it's not as big as Just Clean in terms of the GCC. It's very small. So again, you see two different business models that are probably as expensive as each other. They're probably the same value when Just Clean is everywhere over the GCC, when Washman is a bit more smaller, but they own the supply chain.
They own the supply chain for sure.
But boring business.
Boring businesses, that's the way.
We have to wash our clothes.
Yeah. But it's good because it means competition, right? Like you mentioned earlier.
Good competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Good competition drives I've just jumped into the events game. I've always had, how I've built everything was really just running small little events, putting money behind a bar bill.
Yeah.
Everyone had a good time. I'd done that for years. And then last year I said, let's turn it into a brand.
Right.
Why? Because so many people are looking at this place now. So my goal was to actually attract more people from outside.
Oh, really?
Because when you run around here, you start to know enough people, and that guy knows that guy. So it's
The
small.
knock-on
So,
effect,
but what does this country want? They want new people to keep coming in, keep coming in, keep coming in. So I was like, let's build a brand. Oh, the events industry. Wow, that's competitive. Oh
Really?
my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. Like, that is competitive. And I choose Abu Dhabi. Why? Because I see it as more of a challenge to get people to go to events.
Right.
Dubai is easy.
Dubai is easier for sure.
You say you're doing an event, you have half of Dubai turn up if it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Abu Dhabi is more of a challenge to get people to come because it's always been more reserved, governmental, the big bosses there, all the government sectors, policy writers. So it's always been quite corporate and conservative.
Yeah.
So the goal of doing an event there was to try and push people out their comfort zone.
Yeah. But if people over there aren't going to as many events, then it's not as, maybe, I don't want to call it not communal, but in Dubai, like you said, you know everybody, or at least you know someone that knows someone. But over there, if people aren't really mingling like that, then once you can unlock that, it's pretty powerful. You
That's
start
the
to meet
idea,
people
right?
that
It's
you
like
struggle
I've made
to.
a start on. It's like making an early move on Saudi now. Saudi has so much potential, but it's incredibly boring, right? And as an expat, right, when you're not built into the culture here, it is still quite boring, right? But they're doing their best to make it exciting.
Yes.
But that would take time.
Yeah.
So it's like Dubai's already got the whole package. Now they just need to finalise the regulation, corporate tax, everything, and then they've ticked all the boxes. Abu Dhabi is actually probably ahead in terms of the regulation and the sophistication and the brand as a financial hub, right? You've got all the big US names there. Normally when US trust you, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
SEC are out on board. That's normally it. You don't need anybody
right.
else's approval. But what they're still lacking a little bit is that energy. So it's like I just made an early move on that to try and stimulate it, which is a risk.
Yeah.
You put on one event where it's not a good turnout, people talk.
Yeah.
So I've done 2 so far. I'm doing a 3rd one, and you have to keep it going. You have to have different speakers. You can't have the same faces, because otherwise you stop getting those people who say, "Oh, that was a good one," and like a big CEO or CIO saying that was a good event is worth more than any marketing campaign. Just that referral. So it's like tough.
It is tough. Also, when you're mentioning about Dubai and Abu Dhabi, I'm sure the audience is also a bit different. But in terms of the lens from a startup perspective as well, what are your thoughts on how the Dubai ecosystem is perhaps different from the Abu Dhabi ecosystem?
So I blow the trumpet of Abu Dhabi. And again, that's my choice because I enjoy it there. I see it as a challenge for kind of SMEs and startups.
Yeah.
The corporate stuff, I don't really do, me personally, direct business with them. Right? I invite them to my events, but it's like I care about the hustle of SMEs and startups, right? Because my holding company, I have a bunch of my own. They're not ginormous, right? So solving the challenges for other people as well as myself kind of benefits everybody. So Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Dubai is very good for B2C businesses because you have the population. It's very good for B2C businesses because you have a lot more energy, open-minded, and you have more international people here. Abu Dhabi is more secure.
Okay.
If you get a contract in Abu Dhabi, that would be massive for your startup because they'll typically sign up for a longer period.
Okay.
You're locked in. And that will improve your valuation. It will improve your perspective on everything.
So on,
right? But the hustle is longer in terms of trying to win that because of that conservative approach.
Yeah.
Dubai is very short term. I think it's very short term.
Okay.
Like you can win people for 3 months, then they disappear.
Yeah.
They either move off or they're just like on to the next person. Why? Because people come in and out of Dubai every day. In, out, in, out. There's always a better Lamborghini parked next to yours, right? There's always a better colour or a new upgrade. It's the same with service providers here. There's always going to be somebody coming into Dubai from around the world who is better than you. And you either accept that or you have to try and win the big stuff. So this is kind of where Dubai is very good to start. And I think migrating into Abu Dhabi is a bit better now and more accessible since the pandemic. So Hub 71 is doing very well. It's quite small,
Yeah.
considering Abu Dhabi is the capital and you've only really got Hub 71. So we need more of that. And I know they are building that. Abu Dhabi and Dubai need to work a little bit on price of life. I think apartments in Abu Dhabi Centre are cheaper than Dubai, which has a leg up.
Yes. That's
So I think a lot of people are kind of seeing that as a potential. So differentiating them is kind of like Dubai is a little bit more short term, probably faster to win contracts, which is a positive. More B2C, so you've got more population here. When Abu Dhabi is more sustainable, there's a chance to win a good B2B contract, B2G contract.
Right.
The line is shorter
Yeah.
at a startup level
What do you mean the line, sorry?
for winning business.
Oh, okay. Like there's less contenders. you
Less
mean?
people in the
Yeah.
startup world.
Okay.
The startup world all go to Dubai because that's where the energy is.
Yeah.
That's where all the nice places are. That's where all the free zones are. There's loads of them. So the line is shorter in Abu Dhabi for SMEs and startup. Now, on the flip side, the startup for the institutions and like the big PE funds, private credit funds, the line's very long in Abu Dhabi because that's where the sovereigns are.
Right.
When Dubai, it's very short.
Yeah.
So you have kind of two different markets where all the big names are running to Abu Dhabi for the big sovereigns. But there's a nice little startup ecosystem there that does need a little bit more energy, needs more people,
Yeah.
but it's getting bigger. So again, if you said Dubai is kind of where it is now, Abu Dhabi is getting there, and then Saudi will be after that.
Okay.
And that's kind of how
The
I see
phases,
the progress. Yeah, the phases of, and a lot of it comes down to population. The more people, the more opportunity, the more services that you can provide.
Interesting. So you yourself are an entrepreneur, founder. I feel like we haven't even really touched on that. I suppose just to try and dig out some value in that area of the conversation before we have to wrap up, what's been your experience with growing your own businesses? Like what's been the biggest hurdles for you from a founder's point of view?
Yeah, I get used to not talking about myself because on LinkedIn I just don't talk about myself. I normally try and talk about how to help because that's how I think is the best way of building a community around you.
For sure.
Is by giving free value and experiences. But myself, I mean, as I said, nothing flashy. I got a university degree. I've never really had a proper job, like proper, which I was okay with. And I got used to not making money for like 3 months and then making money. Like, I'm okay with like paying for stuff up front out of my personal savings, which is for a company benefit. A lot of people aren't okay with that. I call it house money. A lot of people wait for the house money, the company money to come in to spend that.
Yeah.
But I'm quite comfortable like spending my own money and saying, don't worry, I'll make it back in. You know, I'll see the long-term value of that. So I just became that person. And the biggest issue I had is I spread myself very thin because I didn't know. I kind of wanted to figure out what's going to work and what's not. I built the community, I built the brand, the reputation, and then I launched a bunch of microservices to see which one
To test it out.
would do.
Yeah.
Because if I put all the time and effort, maybe it could have been successful, but I spread my risk, which has its positives and negatives.
Yeah.
So I've kind of shortened that down now, and what's helped me is I used to wake up and most days and know that I have just a lot to do, a lot of selling, a lot of stuff to do. But now I'm starting to wake up with a little bit more purpose where I'm like, okay, I'm focusing on my events company at the moment and my accounting company.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to eliminate other few things. So I literally wake up every day and I'm like, right, I'm on this. Rather than just saying, I want to make money, I want to win new business, I have a bit more purpose. So I'm learning that. I've been through business partners.
Do you think that's a case of, because you were spreading yourself thin, you weren't sure that they were particularly going to work, and maybe you even saw
I didn't
some
know
of them
what I was
weren't
good
working. But now you've got the ones that are working, so your effort, is going to have a return.
As I said, I didn't know what I was good at. I mean, I built a brand. I was not really earning proper money and like doing research and giving value, but I didn't know what I was good at. And I'm starting to really weirdly enjoy accounting.
Fair enough.
I never thought I would. I hated it when I studied at university.
Interesting.
And it's because of regulation. Like you're seeing a country that wasn't regulated become regulated. It's got fun.
Yeah.
When being in London, it was already regulated. It was
Yeah.
like HMRC was a pain in the backside, right? It's like, go away, I've had enough of you. So I think learnings don't stop. But the best thing I've learned about this country is I can see like the next 10 years, like literally see what I can provide here and where the boring business opportunities, where the exciting business opportunities.
Yes.
But if I went back to London, I can't see anything. It feels like everything's already there.
Yeah.
And then you got to pay tax on top of that. It's like
Cherry on the icing on the cake.
So yeah, learnings. There's probably loads.
Let me help with a direction then. There'll be people listening to this that also don't know what they're good at, maybe just starting out with their careers. What advice would you give to them in terms of, because obviously you've done well for yourself, but you started off not really knowing what you were good at or where you were going to take things.
Yeah, it's you listen to other people, and you can only make money off the people around you. You can only do what's in front of you. You can't just put a digital ad out there and think that everyone's going to buy it from around the world. That's not how life works.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're dreaming. There's everybody's got this expectation mentality of, if I become famous on the internet, people are just going to come to me. And I'm sorry, that doesn't even work really, right? It really doesn't. So it's going back to that old model of, if I live in the village back home, which us growing up, we're still that generation where we didn't have mobile phones when we were born, right? It's like if I bought a bag of apples from the supermarket and I put them in a nice sustainable box and put some tissue paper on, can I sell these apples to my neighbour for a bit more money? High chances, yes, I probably can. Why?
Yeah.
Because they know me and they like me. That's it. They're not buying it because they're just apples. I can go and buy them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I kind of just built that network, running around trying to find the people who like me, understand me, and then figuring out where I can kind of put in a product and service. And it's kind of like having a waiting list. It's like I put a bunch of brands out there, and I remember listening to like this cloud kitchen guy. You know how successful cloud kitchens are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll just be sitting in bed one night and he's like, Gorilla Burger. Let's try it tomorrow. Gorilla Burger. It's the same burger as everybody else, same bun, same meat.
Yeah.
But it's a great name.
People might like it more.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is a true story. I think it's on Talabat now. I can't remember the guy's name. I met him once. He put it out there. He went nuts. Because had a big gorilla on the top. Gorilla Burger sounds powerful.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you could be a human and just launch 4 brands that do different things and see what the waiting list is like. So you just do sign up or whatever.
Yeah.
And especially here, because we're so small, it's literally building your little network of friends, people who trust you or like you. Like with your guys' company, now I know you. If I like the products and services that you're offering, if you're the same price as most other people, which people are in the SME sector,
Yeah.
I'll use you just because I like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's not really advice. It's more, again, about experiences. It's just finding out what you're good at. I just know that there's so much networking potential in this country. So I'm just going to keep going. And maybe one day I'll figure out what I'm good at. I don't know.
Fantastic.
Yes, it is.
I think it's about time we need to wrap up. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute brilliant conversation. And
Cheers, boys.
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again. Yeah.
Thank you.